I'm back with another entry in my catch-up series for the Oscar nominations this weekend, Blue Moon, starring Ethan Hawke, Bobby Cannavale, Richard Scott, amongst others. It's a true story of Lawrence Hart, who is a lyricist for Broadway, and has to confront his shattered self-confidence when his former collaborator, Richard Rodgers, experiences the opening night of his hit musical, Oklahoma. Once again, thank you to G. Colby Porter and also to Delon Liu for these recommendations, because I'm not really going to obviously cover every single nomination before the Oscars on Sunday night. Even after the Oscars, I'm going to try to at least get caught up on them, because, hey, trying to make up for lost time. Just bear with me here. But let's talk about Blue Moon. This is my second time seeing a Richard Linklater film. The first one I saw was Boyhood, way back in 2014 or 15 when it was released, which also starred Ethan Hawke. I didn't love that movie, but I respected the attempt that they were going for there. And from the research I've done on Richard Linklater, he has this way, I think, of getting right to the core of the human soul and what really drives a lot of the character's emotions and how it feels very grounded and real, which I think that's kind of how Boyhood was, where it was a collection of moments that were so constantly in motion and then you don't really realize until you get to a certain point in life and you look back and go, oh, geez. Man, that really blew by, didn't it? Now, obviously, this is a different kind of movie. It's a biographical comedy drama, all set in one location in a hotel, where it has these people from Broadway or musical theater to celebrate a certain opening night of their musicals, which, in the vein of all that stuff, this movie feels like a stage play. This is all dialogue, not really big obstacles or big moments or arguments that you would expect, even in a smaller story like this. But this is the kind of movie I think that fits Richard Linklater's style, at least from what I've been able to gather on him anyway. To go right into it, Ethan Hawke is obviously the main attraction here. He disappears into this character. He's very talkative and erratic and sometimes insufferable, but he manages to ride that fine line of not coming off as too unbearable for everybody around him. There's enough charm to him that, even for me, I found it really hard to dislike the guy because he cares, obviously, about what he wants to do as an artist. Future joke here. He's also shown to be very caring of the people around him, in his own eccentric and quirky ways, more or less. But he's never really able to catch up with his friend Richard. And all of that is hinted through the dialogue when they go back and forth with each other and how Richard expresses frustration with him, with his alcoholic tendencies, and other things that are hinted at where he actually might be secretly gay, which this story is set during the 1940s, the World War II era. That lifestyle was definitely not okay back then. As far as my experience with Ethan Hawke, I've only seen a few things that he's done, from the Magnificent Seven remake from about a decade ago. I remember him in that movie, but I don't remember much of what he does in there. Dead Poets Society, Moon Knight, and also Boyhood by Richard Linklater. And I've also learned that these two are frequent collaborators, like with the Before trilogy, which are considered to be, possibly by some people, the best romance films ever made. Those I have yet to check out, but they're on my watch list. And I've only seen a part of Training Day, where he starred with Denzel Washington. That was a long time ago. I'll get to that eventually. The vibe that I get from Ethan Hawke, he's basically like the common everyday man, and he also has the look where he can fit right into a past era, with the makeup and hair and everything. I mean, I obviously recognize that's Ethan Hawke, but there were a few times where I had to say, oh right, that's Ethan Hawke, and that's a big compliment you can give to an actor or actress. They don't want you to even notice that they're acting. He has this group of friends at this hotel, like Bobby Cannavale, who's the bartender. You might recognize him from Shall We Dance as Chick. My parents and my mom especially, she loves that movie, so Mom, if you know who it is, you know who I'm talking about. Then there's a soldier playing the piano who's on leave to help his mother. And E.B. White, famous writer of Stuart Little and Charlotte's Web, is sitting nearby. I've done some research into the historical accuracy. There's no record or evidence that these two guys ever met, but I do like seeing how E.B. White is able to get the idea of Stuart Little, where Larry talks about this mouse that he has to constantly chase in his apartment, and as he walks away to talk to somebody, he writes this little note down in his notebook. Anyone familiar with American literature, we all know where that goes. But throughout all these interactions with E.B. White, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and his friend Elizabeth, who he has a crush on, it's all basically a self-reflection of this guy's life and how he felt like he could have been something better, but he never really was able to live up to what he wanted to be, which, like I said, is all hinted at through the dialogue exchanges between him and Richard, who was always frustrated with his erratic behavior and his alcohol addiction. And I guess there's this sort of jealousy on Larry's part when he sees that Richard was able to accomplish something really big, something that was going to make a huge impact for a long time, and to this day, Oklahoma is still considered to be one of the greatest Broadway musicals. Sidebar, the first time I ever heard of the musical was in the movie Twister. While as they're driving off to find the F1 tornado, Belzer is just randomly singing the famous chorus line, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, and the waving wheat.
It sure smells sweet when the wind comes right behind the rain.
O'Keefe, you're sitting on your bayonet?
Band of Brothers was also the second reference. And by the way, the guy who plays Richard Rodgers is Andrew Scott, who if you're a fan of the Band of Brothers series, you'll recognize him as this guy from the second episode.
What's that guy's problem?
Gonorrhea.
So besides having a name, what's his problem?
He's alright, that kid. It was also kind of a learning experience for me to figure out what exactly the connection was. I obviously knew of the names, Rodgers and Hammerstein, but when I heard them mention their names, I thought, wait. The Rodgers and Hammerstein? These two guys? That's what this movie's about? Someone who was not into Broadway musicals, this was kind of a big learning experience for me, even with all the historical inaccuracies and creative liberties that are thrown in here. Now, I realize I'm delving into the spoilers right now, but if you haven't seen this movie and you don't want to know what happens, you might not want to watch this. There's really no big moments to spoil or anything. This is all based on a series of letters about Loren's heart. And towards the end of the movie, he has this conversation with Elizabeth, who tells him about this boy that she was interested in, how he stood her up initially, but then out of the blue, he called her back, and then they just had a big romantic moment together. And while Larry professes his love for her, she says that she does, but not in the same way. And even for me, I thought, oh, sadly, I know how that feels. But what I really like that this movie does is that there's no big argument or abandonment of this guy. There's a core group of people in the hotel that he's befriended, from the bartender, the person at the desk who takes care of all the laundry or the clothes or whatever. They all stick around to listen to his stories because he's always talking and trying to keep himself occupied from all of his insecurities. And rather than admonish him or put him down, they all just sit there patiently listening to him because he needs somebody to lean on, if anything. And for this being all in one location, the way people talk and the way they dress, and the whole production design, the atmosphere of the 1940s is perfectly captured and put on display. My favorite historical era are the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. So this was a huge plus in my book. And also there was a nice little touch where Morty, the piano player who's the soldier, he plays Larry's greatest hit, Blue Moon, hence the title of this movie, which is probably the only thing he's ever going to be famous for. Even if he was, towards the end of his life, basically a has-been, he was a key ingredient in some big pieces of entertainment that are still relevant after all this time. Oh yeah, and the actress who plays Elizabeth, Margaret Qualley, I'm not sure how to say her name. She's famous for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I recognize her as Amelia from The Nice Guys. To sum it up, Blue Moon is not exactly a flashy biographical tale. Basically a bittersweet tale of someone who had some success in the past, but was never able to really recreate that. On top of that, you got Ethan Hawke's performance, which has been nominated for Best Actor. Depending on the competition, he may or may not win this. I think he's going up against Timothée Chalamet. I'd be really surprised if they don't give this one to Ethan Hawke, but we'll see what the Academy decides on. So that's all I have for you guys on Blue Moon. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this movie if you've seen it. If you'd like to see more from me, just hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.